I believe fear is driven by the limited amount of vision, right? So if I'm walking down a dark street and I'm about to pass a building and is around a corner, I don't know what's around that corner.
Mhm.
And I may receive and feel, truly feel fear. But if I could see around the corner, there's nothing there. Maybe there's a gelato station. That'd be awesome.
Welcome to the Dream Architect Life podcast. I am just thrilled today because we get to have a great conversation with one of the most remarkable visionaries that I've been fortunate to meet. I met Chad at Strategic Coach and a class called the Free Zone. And I've just been amazed at the insight that Chad has into life, into business. And I think you're going to find this just truly one of the most remarkable conversations. So I'm excited to get going. I'm just going to say a couple of things about Chad, and then I'm going to let him tell his story. So let me just give you a real quick background, and I'll let him add the other important parts. So Chad's zeal to understand how businesses work allow him to immediately identify invisible opportunities, and that is really his expertise. And it's really remarkable that over his career, he's gotten so many achievements and is actually doing his most best work right now and the thing that gives him the most passion. But a couple of interesting things. He's been recognized by Inc. 5000. He's created over 50 ventures. Most of us, if we have a business, one seems like enough. Chad loves more. And right now he's pioneering a company called Seed Spark Collab Partners, and we'll talk a lot more about that. But Chad, welcome. And so
Yes.
glad to have you on the podcast.
Brian, such a pleasure to be here. I was looking very forward to this conversation, as we've had many over the past since we've met. They're always deep and rich, and I'm looking forward to hopefully creating some exponential value for the folks that are listening.
Well, thank you. And I know we will absolutely do that today. So let's just maybe start out by, tell us a little bit about your story. I gave a real brief background, but I think it's
Hmm.
pretty fascinating from where you started to, where you're at today.
Sure, sure. So original start in a little place down in South Carolina. The name of the town is Pageland, which is quite a unique name. And I've always joked that time moves backwards. And I don't do very much moving backwards, at least not well. So, growing up on the farm at the time, I really just wanted to break out, right? There's a big drive to figure out how in the world do I somehow get to New York. And when I was a kid, it's very funny. I'd never made it to New York until maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Now I've probably been 50 times. Although I've been many places on the planet, I'd never been to New York. But growing up on that farm, I wouldn't take anything for it because I spent a ton of time around horses and putting up fence and bush hogging pastures. That time on the farm spent with the horses, I learned at a very early age, these horses didn't talk, but they communicated a whole lot. So not just nonverbal communication, but their mannerisms, and you could really pick up on a lot, and you'd be surprised on how much of that transfers over to humans in general and ultimately business as well. So I feel like it's definitely given me a competitive edge of being on that farm by myself in the middle of a pasture with 200% humidity and 100-degree weather, and putting up, as I mentioned, barbed wire fence and just being in my head. Because so natural curiosity has driven me definitely since the time I was 8, but it seems like even maybe a little bit before. And I will share now that what I call your unique value contribution, which is we're both students of Dan Sullivan, strategic coach, and they help you with identifying your unique ability, which was absolutely wonderful. My mind goes to practical application. So I love theories and wisdom, but I try to unpack it on how can I apply it, and then ultimately how can I apply it for others. So my unique value contribution is driven by a question that I constantly ask that I started asking when I was about 8, and that is, how can I take what I see and combine it with what I know or who I know to create value for the world? So starting out around 9 years old, I began to ride horses through sale barns because I could take what I saw. People had horses they wanted to sell. people in the stands wanted to buy, and I had a capability of riding horses. And it would make you think that any adult could ride this horse because there's a peanut-sized kid riding it. Not 100% true, but the conversion of that value creation would net me about $20. So at 9 years old, 300 to 400 bucks a week wasn't a bad salary or bad income. That took me on a journey to buying my first piece of real estate. And then continuing asking that question, I was able to take all the components that existed on that farm that sometimes I detested because I wanted to be in a big city. And I took those things and combined them together to begin my very first real company was a landscaping company. Around 15 years old, you're able to drive in South Carolina. A little scary now that I have two young daughters, but that was my very first organization. And I turned that into one company after another company. All of that at the root, what's driving it is the ability to see how to take what exists already, recombine it, and create new and unique value. You can kind of see that correlation back to that constant question that I mentioned. And then Dan had shared a few years ago, it made a lot of sense to me that even Steve Jobs said all creativity comes from combining two things that already exist, which is what I've been doing since a very early age.
Yeah. And I will tell you that absolutely is your unique ability.
Mhm.
It's just fascinating in just chatting with you or
Mhm.
watching you interact with others, how you can take multiple ideas and create something new
Mhm.
or solve a problem by saying you're missing this part
Mhm.
and knowing who to have them collaborate with. And
Yes, sir.
I think that is such a blessing, knowing somebody that can be helpful. And obviously, with what you're doing today,
Yeah.
we'll talk more about your current company and how you're helping. I think it was 300
Mhm.
people, collaborate. But in all your dealings with different businesses, what would you say is like maybe the most difficult lessons that either you've learned or you've seen other business owners go through, and maybe in business, maybe in life?
Mm. But I appreciate the question. And then I would argue that you, I believe, have the answer. And the way that I pick up on that is dream. So folks that are around me a lot will hear me absolutely say that vision is the catalyst, right? Once you begin to understand that the whole world is built on collaboration, that literally nobody that's going to listen to this, nor the people on this telephone call, do anything themselves. It is always in collaboration with a person, a place, or a thing. So if that's true, it led me to ask another question, and that is, well, what's holding everyone back? Vision, ultimately imagination. And when I mentioned, I fully feel like you have the answer. I'm looking at your books behind dream, dream. I'm seeing a common theme, right? So we have, and we're instilled with this. Well, I would argue that it comes from the divine, which is our imagination, is that. So leveraging the imagination and dreaming bigger to the point that the only thing that you will tell yourself is, I can't do this myself. And so when people realize that, I create vision expansion tools to help folks get beyond their current existence and really dream and leverage that imagination. I see entrepreneurs on a daily basis and other folks as well, and we become so confined in our current existence, and we've left that magic that we had around 7 to 10 years old, which was that leveraging of that imagination. No one told you that you couldn't have a fort in the woods or you couldn't crawl up this tree. So what did you do? You crawled up the tree. Sometimes you fell out of the tree, and that's a crazy story. But you also built a lot of forts along the way, or you jumped off a big rock into water. And when we get older, we don't do that. Well, I think the same thing absolutely plagues entrepreneurs, and I would say humans in general, is we get away from leveraging what we were given, which is a true gift, which is the gift of imagination, and ultimately and one of your books is behind you says dare to dream. So I feel like that's a huge one. We're all not dreaming or we're not reaching big enough or high enough. when we know collaboration is the answer.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And, it's been my experience that, everybody has bigger options, opportunities,
Hmm.
imagination.
Yes.
And especially when you're younger, as we all know, just, kind of talking about your youth, everybody wanted to be astronauts and something big. And then I
Yes.
don't know, they go to school or something happens and those change and they let life happen to them instead of making it happen.
Yes,
And
sir.
I think, it's such a critical thing to one, be aware of, who can help you, because we all have it within us to have a better life
Yes.
and better businesses. And it's just a matter of reaching out. And as you said, there's somebody out there that can help you. And I've just, personally seen all the magic that you've done, not only for others, but also for us. And I just think people being aware, and the purpose of having you on this podcast is to let people know there are people like you that, if you're
Hmm.
struggling or looking for something or you're looking for collaborations, there's resources out there that you may not even be aware of. And that's one of the
Hmm.
purpose of this podcast is to introduce you to really amazing people that are
Yeah.
doing miraculous things in the world and hearing how they do it and how you can get involved. So you kind of talked a little bit about it, Chad, but you know, uh, a lot of times I think people taking off what you said, they kind of get in their own way.
Absolutely.
And what have you found, that by people following your system or the collaboration,
Mhm.
what benefits does it bring? Obviously, you get to your goal probably a lot quicker, but maybe expand on why you've developed this passion and business to
Hmm.
help others connect the dots.
Hmm. So what it really came from reflection, and I'll definitely give credit. I would not be here if it were not for a strategic coach, truly. So helping to expand that vision and being okay with who you are. I've been chastised. You mentioned how many operating companies or businesses that have been started. I would have a lot of people saying, why do you continue doing this? It was never about the businesses I was creating. It was always about the value I saw that could be delivered to those that I identified could receive that value. So as I continued to traverse the landscape, so to speak, it became a little bit more reflective. The chastising or the challenges of being received by others that I was experiencing because I would just go and create. So that is the business. So what I realize is there's many entrepreneurs on the planet that they have wonderful businesses, they have wonderful capabilities, but they do not have the same level of vision. So what if I were just to collaborate with them, help them with vision, leveraging their capabilities, and we will split the outcome of this great and bigger existence, right? A lot of times, whenever they get engaged, their vision begins to expand because they're starting to shift their mindset into the way which I see the world, which is if I am able to envision a better existence, the only thing I need to do is find the people on the planet who are most likely on a Zoom call or in a meeting right now. They have the capability, and they're probably talking to somebody saying, if I could just find the person who needed our capability, we would literally do the work and then split the outcome. Right. So what are they missing? They're missing the vision. So that's one reason you saw me after a couple years, understanding I've been collaborating since I was about 8 years old, because it's just the way in which I see the world, the awareness that other entrepreneurs don't see it, and the true value creation opportunity. If I would just collaborate with them, I don't need to start any more organizations. There's plenty of companies on the planet. They don't have the same level of vision, and I can combine with them and split the outcome.
Yeah.
But this is a capability that we all have.
Yeah, I think what you say is amazing. And, one of the things that I think people maybe lose track of is, the more value you can deliver to others, obviously the results that you're going to get is so enhanced. And There's a friend of ours named Joe Polish that says, life gives to the giver and takes from the taker.
Hmm.
And I think, one of your secrets is helping people, one, understand their vision
Hmm.
better, and then like, how do I deliver more value from that vision?
Hey, Brittany here. In case you hadn't heard, our latest book, Dream Architecture, is available for the taking. Think about it like this: what is your biggest, wildest dream of what retirement could look like? Not the dream that your friends have, or your parents maybe had, or your coworkers. Your best dream, the unreasonable one, the one that you might have trouble admitting even to yourself. So that is what the Dream Architecture book is about. Hop on over to dreamarchitecturebook.com so you can start dreaming big today.
Maybe we could spend a little bit of time talking about, what you're working on right now. Because since I've known you, you've made some changes here recently. And I think,
Yeah.
you're actually able to really spend all of your time in your true genius.
That's true, which is what I would love to help each and every entrepreneur I've ever exposed to and had the pleasure of being introduced to do that exact same thing. I go home with more energy than I wake up with.
Yeah.
But it truly is. I think I'm definitely receiving it from somewhere else, and I am genuinely appreciative of it. So today, my focus is that exact is helping entrepreneurs by default with understanding the art of collaboration to help them grow exponentially. And the first thing we have to do is take an inventory of what they have to collaborate with. Because if you were to ask anybody, what do you do? They're likely going to tell you, I own this type of company and we do this type of work in this type of industry. You know how many other people do that? Everybody else who owns that type of company and that type of industry and does that type of work. I'm asking a much deeper question. What do you do? Like, what makes you unique? Because the way in which you do what you do is what people are drawn to and the reason they do business with you. What I found as well is the secret sauce, we're giving it away for free. All entrepreneurs and most businesses, because they're using those conventional terms in their industry or whatever societal norms are to be able to interpret and communicate. But the second you dig a little bit deeper to find what I shared with you guys earlier was my unique value contribution, giving that a name, first becoming aware of it, giving that a name, and then considering packaging, messaging, and beginning to offer it. Whoa, you just wipe the competition off the playing field, right? So you're not a plumber, you're not a litigation attorney, you're not a person who owns a bunch of supermarkets. This is the way in which we create value. By way, we own supermarkets, and that's our distribution of it. But helping folks chisel down to that, it becomes a lot easier to see how you can combine this unique value contribution of somebody who's doing something unique. There's a gentleman that I met a couple of days ago, owns quite a few grocery stores in and around Jersey, but he's doing it in a unique way, but he's never named it. So people come to his store to receive the experience that he's delivering by leveraging his and his team's unique value contribution, but it's not named. But the second you would name it, you empower everyone who loves coming to your store to be an ambassador for you. So I'd strongly encourage you, as you're listening to this, find your UVC, give it a name, and empower others to become an ambassador for you, because that can ignite not only your ability to grow your business exponentially yourself, but it also empowers you now to identify the rest of those that you're in community with. Now that your mindset begins to shift to this, you'll start seeing other people's unique value contribution. And when you do that, you also begin to see how their unique value contribution, potentially combined with yours, can create a much bigger outcome. So I
Yeah.
spend my days doing that.
The unique experience component, I think, is so important. I mean,
Yes,
that's the fifth pillar of the, Dream Architect life is
absolutely.
experiences. And I think the more people can grasp that, where, there's 8 zillion plumbers and
Yes.
grocery store owners, but how do I make mine the only unique experience? And by having, that experience, also have a unique name. It's
Yes, which you've
you're the
done so
only
much
one in the
of, right?
country that can call it that. Yeah.
Yeah, so kudos to you. I mean, I mentioned it earlier, but the way in which you've created the dream architect and the five pillars, like you've given all these things a name. So as I experience them or someone who experiences them, you are empowering them to share that experience, not with a series of bullet points, not a bunch of description that's really not going to transfer, right? The first job in the Bible that God gave Adam was name all the plants, name all the animals. Well, until then, did they really exist? Right? So we can leverage just that simple human wisdom
Yeah.
in our businesses and even in our lives to separate ourselves and actually just enable people to see you unique, whether it's you and or your business in the 8 zillion plumbers that you talked about.
Yeah.
So kudos to you and what you've already done.
Well,
Follow
thank
what
you.
Brian has done.
Yeah. That analogy, you need to share that one with Dan if you haven't, because that's a great example
Hmm.
of why you would have a unique naming process. So,
Yes, indeed. Yes,
yeah, I loved it. I know one of your favorite, acronyms is VCR,
absolutely.
and
Yes.
that might be really interesting to kind of share a little bit about conceptually and how that's so impactful.
Yeah. So a shortcut to success is, and this is Mr. Dean Jackson, a very good friend now. Dan had introduced us a couple years ago, and we actually are working on a VCR book, which is the VCR formula. It should be out
Ah,
in about 60
awesome.
days. Yeah.
That'll be a very popular book, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. So the formula that Dean created was the awareness that vision, he says, plus capability multiplied times reach is a shortcut to success. I mentioned even earlier here, I believe vision is the catalyst. There's many, many folks with capabilities. There's many folks that have 1,000 trucks, or they have all these billboards, or they have all these buildings as signage opportunities. So they have reach. There are organizations sending out tons of invoices, whether it be electronic, hopefully it is today. Some of them still send it through the snail mail. That's a component of reach. But what I would, now we've had great conversations about it. I feel like it's vision multiplied times capability times reach is the true shortcut to success. Beginning to look at the world that particular way of identifying first what inventory you have of what vision do you possess. Whenever you have an idea, I have a quick little assessment that this will be available in the book and online, but I'll give you a little glimpse to it. From a vision component, do you see things whenever you have ideas in black and white? Do you see them potentially in color or maybe even HD? Or whenever you have an idea or a vision, do you have it in 3D? Do you not only know that there's an opportunity in the future that you could describe to me, but what's it going to look like, smell like, feel like, who's involved? And if you think about it from a Google Map perspective, whenever you say I want to get from point A to point B, it shows you three different ways. True 3D vision knows not only that three ways exist, but here's the right way based upon the traffic now, based upon the other capabilities that are required. I know who they are, and I know when I'm going to need them to help bring this vision to a reality. And there are many people out there that have that level of vision. So whenever you come up with an idea, just a quick little shortcut for yourself to leverage a vision that you have, you might consider, do I see this in black and white? Do I see it in color or is it HD? Do I know not only that this is going to be impactful, I know how to get there and I kind of know who's involved. Or do you see it in 3D? Like you can taste it of this future reality. If you don't have that, I'd encourage you, find somebody who does have that level of vision, share with them your vision, and in collaboration, you can get to this future reality, right? Because we don't possess this, and I have ideas, whew, on a second by second basis. Some of them are in black and white, and I'm always looking for collaborators who can take this initial idea of value creation or a future positive outcome for me or for someone else. I'm looking for somebody can help me create that outcome because it's going to require it. Maybe I do have that vision, but I don't have the capability. And maybe I have the capability, but I don't have all of this available warehouse space that has the reach component.
Yeah, I just love that explanation. And as like I'm a big mastermind. Love to go
Yeah.
to places where big thinkers hang out. And part of the reason I go is I have these ideas of maybe in 3D or whatever of
Yes.
where I want to take things, but I don't necessarily know all the pieces that should fit. And when
Yes.
you get introduced to people, sometimes the light bulb goes off. Oh, that person could be a really good fit. We need to sit down and just chat.
Yeah.
Now, the problem with that is, can you meet enough people to
Yes.
meet all the different components? And that's where I find, what you do so fascinating because
Hmm.
in my conversations with you, you can kind of explain, what you have your vision. You can
Yes.
kind of tell you what you're missing, but then you have so many collaborations and knowledge of the pieces of the pie
Hmm.
that it really shortens up the time frame to, get from A to B or
Yes.
Z, if you
Yes.
will. And so I think that's part of like your magic because people can spend a lot of time just meeting people at really great places, which I highly encourage you to do just because, there's some fascinating things going on in the world. But,
Yes, sir.
from your own development of your business and your career,
Hmm.
I think what you're doing is one so unique, but
Hmm.
I don't know, it might be the most helpful component of any person I've met to really help accelerate ideas. And, a lot of times 1 plus 1 in collaborations is 3 or 30.
Yes,
And
sir.
plus, it's a lot of fun going on the journey.
Yes, it is. No, I appreciate you. Thank you for the kind words. What I realized is the way in which I see the world, because I was on that farm, and I said, I want to get out of here, and I can't. How am I ever going to make money? I was completely oblivious to all the capabilities that I had at my fingertips. I had a tractor, I had a truck, I had a trailer. I knew how to run the tractor, and I could drive the truck, and I could combine those things together and create value for somebody. And the first entree to that was I knew a person who did real estate for banks. They were gonna, and that time they built a lot of branches. I was a kid, right? 20 years ago. 20, it's a little bit more than 20 years ago now because I'm
I was,
starting to get a little older.
I was going to say, well,
I ran the
maybe a
math and I'm
couple.
like, hold up, it's been a little bit longer than that. So anyway, this gentleman, they had bank parcels, out parcels where they were eventually going to build, but they didn't need them landscaped. They just didn't want to get fines from the city. They needed a bush hog. They needed a good country boy to come out there and bush hog this thing once a month. It was making $50 an hour. And it has been longer than 20 years ago. That was serious money, right? And so I began to just at that time look at the world that way. So we all have so many more access to capabilities. The vision that you have, as I mentioned again, is the catalyst. There's someone on a Zoom call right now saying, man, if we could just find somebody who needed what we have, we'd partner with them and we get paid at the end. So don't squash your dreams. With the collab, which you mentioned the timer here, I've evolved to the place where my complete focus is helping entrepreneurs across this planet by way of building a global entrepreneur collaboration called the collab. There's a mobile application where they're all able to communicate. I've built an extensive amount of tools to help expand people's vision, people being entrepreneurs, to take their vision and help them. The first book was just add a zero, right? But the second that you
Great
add a
book, by the
zero,
way.
thank you. The first time you add a zero to something, and it could be a zero to an experience, right? It doesn't have to all be about money or the P&L, but I would argue it works very well for your P&L. If you're a business owner with an entrepreneur, you export that P&L and add a zero to every component on that P&L, and then let your mind tell you exactly what it's going to do first. The reason that you can't do this, or the reason uniforms will not be the same percentage that they are at 10 million when you get to 100 million. And I say, well, that's great. Knowing that now, what the heck are you going to do? Right. So our vision is what's holding us back. So what I wanted to do in setting out the collab, I wanted to empower entrepreneurs with understanding the art of collaboration, Let's move away from a competition first growth strategy, which is what we've been trained in every bit of education. We mentioned 8 years old in that imagination. Then you end up in grade school and know, oh, for some reason you can't be an astronaut or you can't be the quarterback for the New England Patriots, which you might not want to be. But all of those societal norms and conventions are the thing that take our imagination away. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Let's get back to that, actually. And I've created a formula where you can actually create and receive that reality, which is what I think you've done, exactly what you've done with the dream architect. But one thing that's going to hold you back is community. So that's why the collab exists. Not only does it help you expand that vision and give you a formula to help make it a reality, but once my vision's here and I say, I can't do this all by myself, and I say, you know what, you're actually right. We've never done anything ourselves. And here's a whole global community of growth-minded entrepreneurs that have a collaboration first growth mindset. Well, now you're empowered and you just watch the magic happen. So I get to see this on a daily basis. It's very rewarding.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. And I think, most people have capabilities that maybe they don't recognize,
Yes.
but I think the biggest thing that affects people and holds them back. Dan Sullivan would maybe call it courage. I
Hmm.
think the audience would maybe use the word fear.
Yes, sir.
And so, with all the successes and all of the businesses that you've worked with, maybe give us an example of either a business that you've worked with or you personally where you overcame fear or you gained courage
Yeah.
and that led to a moment of growth or learning that
Yeah, sure,
was
sure.
really impactful that would maybe be helpful to the audience.
Yeah. Well, I want to touch base on what you just said there. Fear. I believe fear is driven by the limited amount of vision, right? So if I'm walking down a dark street and I'm about to pass a building and there's around a corner, I don't know what's around that corner.
Mhm.
And I may receive and feel, truly feel fear. But if I could see around the corner, there's nothing there. Maybe there's a gelato station. That'd be awesome. But if I had that level of vision, I would be fine. The fear would go away. So this big vision that you have, or this big outcome, or maybe you want to retire here, or you want to buy a house in Italy, or whatever that is, and you have this fear that it can't be, I would strongly encourage you to look around. There are people that can help you with that. Now I'll actually answer your question a couple ways. A long, long time ago, I was in the wireless business, and I'd stumbled into that business just like I'd stumbled into every business I've ever created because I identified a way to create value. But even in that business, I didn't write, I didn't really like the conventional value creation. People needed mobile phones, and for this price of the equipment, this much monthly, they could have a phone. But there was an additional value creation opportunity I immediately recognized because it was a friction, and which is the second book is Friction Fuel. I noticed I've always been driven by just identifying frictions. These are not things that people are complaining about, but they're things that they're turning a blind eye to, but they'll mention it along the way. They're not emotional about it, but those are frictions. And if you grab a hold of those, holy moly, can you create some serious value? Here's an example. I'd never been in the wireless business. They thought it was a joke because I'd basically built a Tractor Supply when my very early 20s, late teens, and someone come along and wanted to sell me this particular type of mobile communication device. And I said, whoa, it will create this value for me. I'll take that deal. Let me ask you a question. How do you get set up to sell those? And so this big organization came down and walked through this 20,000 square foot building of a bunch of horse stuff and pet stuff and said, you want to sell what? But I knew the value, I identified with the value that could be created from the reach that I had. There's a lot of people with horses that build houses, put up fence, do irrigation, move dirt. And those people trusted me, right? So I immediately just identified vision, capability, and reach. I had the vision that it would create value. I did not yet have the capability. They walked in that store and looked at all these exposed rafters in this very nice building. And they thought I was an absolute joke, but I knew I had reach. I identified and knew how to create value with it. So I took a chance. They made me sell my stuff through a guy way outside of a major metropolitan area, Charlotte, North Carolina. 3 months later, they came back and said, we don't know what you're doing, but we have to make you a dealer because you're making it look like this little city way outside of town is selling more than our direct sales force and our indirect distribution. What the heck are you doing? That says real simple. I'm making it easy for people to do business with me. Go to where they are, right? So later on, another example was there was a friction. I recognized everybody's bill was messed up. If we could see a show of hands of how many times you got in a cell phone bill and you didn't really understand why it's so expensive. That's not what they told you. Well, that was a big problem. And the fear that I had, because I knew I could save people money, the facts were they change rate plans every month. My people have to know them. I can understand simple math, and it's like playing matchmaker. New rate plan, existing client, everybody saves money. And the people in the industry thought I was an absolute joke that nobody would pay me to look at their bill. They didn't really understand. They weren't paying me to look at their bill. They're paying me on the outcome. And the outcome eventually saved millions of dollars for many organizations. I think before I sold it, it was 100,000 phones a month that I'd built software to look at people's cell phone bills, right? So now fast forward. I writing down when I figured out that I'd been collaborating since I was about 8 years old. It's the way in which I see the world. I didn't have anything, at least I thought that way. So I began to say, what can I combine to create value? How the heck am I going to make money and get out of here? Today, launching the collab, there's never been anything and I continue to search the world over. There's no organization where you're in community with other like-minded entrepreneurs that literally are there to collaborate to help each other grow. It's like, concept this, if you will. What if tomorrow morning 8 billion people woke up on this planet and had your back? Where would we be? I feel like we'd be teleporting around the universe by now, right?
Yeah.
You could do anything you wanted to. Work would not exist the way that it does today. And we're heading a little bit that direction with AI, but I feel like we're doing it at slow pace, snail mail pace. But through the art of collaboration, you can get there so much exponentially faster. So I embarked on creating a community that was about collaboration, built on collaboration. I don't hire a bunch of people. It's scaled through its members. And as I'm here to tell you, it can be done. So it was another place that fear combined with vision, 3D vision, I would argue, because I can see all these collaborations across the world happening and helping people grow very unconventionally and defying all the margins in their industry.
Well, I think one of the things, and we'll have this in the show notes, but for people that are, kind of fascinated, which is probably everybody, including me, by, what you're doing and how you're doing it, what's the best way for somebody to reach out to you? And we'll include links to your, websites and your books and things in the show notes.
Sure.
But if somebody wanted to learn more about what you're doing, is there a best way to contact you, Chad?
Yeah, so the collab itself is under one of my organizations by the name of Seed Spark. So at seedspark.com, which has for 20 years stood for Seed Vision, Spark Growth. It makes a lot of sense that it would launch something called the collab. But all the information about the Seed Spark collab can be found at seedspark.com. And then me personally, about the best way, LinkedIn is a good way. I have it monitored constantly, and we will certainly reply and help direct and get to the right place to begin starting to create that value collaboratively.
Yeah. Well, I'm amazed how fast time goes, but I do have
Yeah,
a couple of other questions before we wrap up, Chad. I really
sure.
appreciate your time today. So maybe one question would be, is there one piece of advice that you'd give to our listeners? And then I'd also like to know, maybe what your big dream or aspiration is for your future. Maybe a
Sure.
twofold question
So I'll
there.
tell you, I track something called True Wisdom in my Apple Notes, and I've done that for the last 10 or 15 years. And as I run across things, I add them to this Apple Note. There's one that has always stayed at the top, and it's the awareness that the only thing that matters is how other people see their future and how you can help them with that future.
Hmm.
So that one stayed at the top for a very, very long time, and it is absolutely a guiding principle. If I can focus on others and how they see their future, which I feel like is very complementary or in alignment with the work that you've always done, you have a complete system that does that. And focusing on how we can help them create that future, you will have an abundance of opportunity, value, and all the resources you ever need. So that is one.
Wow, that might be the best answer I've heard to that
Oh,
question. And
really?
I think that's why people are so attracted to you, Chad, because you
Mhm.
really truly just ooze wanting to help others. And it
Mm.
just that's just who you are and obviously what you do. Um,
That answers the second question, by the way.
yeah,
It does.
yeah.
So this big outcome, I'm starting first with entrepreneurs. If I can get them as well to shift their mindset to a collaboration first growth strategy, I can see into the future with the amount of value that's going to create, not just for themselves, but for everyone that they touch. And as they grow, what do? They create jobs. What do? They impact communities. So eventually, in years into the future, and only through collaboration, it will not be that many years. It is highly possible that instead of starting out at 8 years old with a competitive mindset being driven into and imaginations being squashed, I hope to affect that we began with a collaboration first mindset and really leverage the imagination of our youth. Watch the world change then.
Oh, and I really couldn't agree more. I think that ties in with, what I said earlier about, when you're young, something happens and you lose that ability to think bigger, make
Mhm.
life positive, and if you could instill those skills or thinking processes at an early age, just think of the amazing things that those young kids could create and what a life
Absolutely.
they would create for themselves and others.
And others. Yes.
Yeah.
This has been a
Well,
lot of fun.
yeah, it must be a lot of fun. Yeah, and anytime you're doing this, I think that needs to be part of the equation is
Mhm.
fun. So I always like to end the podcast with one question,
Mhm.
and what is it that I didn't ask you that I should have asked you?
Mm. Mm. What a great question. I'm so in tune with being asked questions, and I spend a lot of time in my head. What would be one question that you didn't ask? Hmm. I would tell you, Brian, you did such a masterful job. Nothing really comes to mind at the moment.
I'll,
I mean, we
I'll
touched
send
on a
you a
lot of
check
things.
later. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the check's in the mail. That's awesome. Yeah. Honestly, I'm on a lot of podcasts, and I would in complete kudos to you. Not just the work that you're doing, because it seems like our thinking is aligned. You've built out so many things that are impacting lives very positively. So kudos to you. But on the podcast, the questions that you've asked, I feel like have uncovered the ability to just get really genuine. On a lot of podcasts, they're somewhat I would not say sterile, but closer to sterile. And it's just that the genuineness is not there, that it's more regimented. And so you've done a great job. And therefore, I really don't have a question that I don't feel like you should have asked. You've done a great
All
job.
right. Well, Chad, it's been an absolute blast and
Yeah.
an honor to have you on our podcast. And, just personally, me speaking here, I look so forward to working with you, myself, and all the things that we're creating because I know with your help and guidance, what we're going to be able to deliver to others is going to be so impactful. So, thank you for your time. Look forward to sharing this with our audience, and I think it's going to be a really impactful conversation for others. So,
That's
hope you
wonderful.
have yourself an amazing day. Thanks for your time, Chad.
That's my pleasure. Thanks, Brian.
The opinions voiced in the Dream Architect Life podcast with Brian Sweet and Brittany Anderson are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine what may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial, or tax advisor prior to investing. Guests on the show are not affiliated with CWM LLC Investment Advisory Services offered through CWM LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. Carson Partners, a division of CWM LLC, is a nationwide partnership of advisors.